Oh my god. It's only a first draft. Hi everybody, it's your boy, traumatized and sleep-deprived writer David Dunn, hitting you with a brand new video. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be talking about... Yeah, that game. So Alan Wake 2 is a survival horror game. It's the sequel to the 2010 video game Alan Wake. In it, you play as a famous writer named Alan Wake who has been trapped in an alternate dimension called the Dark Place for 13 years. And in order to escape from the Dark Place, he has to write his way out of it. Meanwhile, in the real world, you also play as Saga Anderson, an FBI agent investigating a series of murders that are tied into Alan Wake's novels. While all of this is going on, both Alan and Saga are being hunted by an evil entity known as Scratch, which is basically Alan's evil doppelganger. Basically wants to write a horrific ending to the human race as we know it. Starting with what I liked about this game, I really love the tone. I really love the atmosphere. Especially in the Dark Place. When you're in the Dark Place as Alan, it's very hazy, loopy, strange, surreal, dreamlike. It feels like a never-ending nightmare you can never wake up from. And the game does a really good job creating a dark, tense, and atmospheric setting filled with dread and anxiety. You're always on edge, you're always in survival mode, you're always on alert for what could be lurking around every corner. I like that. I like the fact that you never really feel quite safe in the Dark Place. It does a really good job portraying the personal hell that Alan has been trapped in for 13 years. I also really like the parallels between the two different gameplay styles. When you play as Alan in the writer's room, you can rewrite any scene you're in to fit your specific needs and circumstances. So if there's an obstacle in your path or you need a specific item for a certain segment, you can rewrite that scene and change it in order to move forward and progress with the story. Meanwhile, when you're playing as Saga, you're playing the role of a detective. So instead, you're investigating crime scenes, gathering clues, retracing steps, and putting the pieces together to figure out what exactly happened. It's the difference between finding the truth as Saga versus writing your own truth as Alan. And I really love that distinction between these characters. I also really love how these stories intersect, because when you're playing as Alan, you send possessed items back into the real world for Saga to find so she can communicate with Alan in the Dark Place. But what Alan doesn't realize is that when he's sending these items back into the real world, he's also sending these possessed monsters called Taken to hunt and kill Saga. Basically, the further Alan progresses and the closer he gets to reaching his goal, the more he jeopardizes others and puts innocent people in very real danger. I love that. I love that perspective. I love that what seems like progress to one person is actually a threat to someone else. It's a great reflection of action equals consequence. And sometimes we don't really realize how much damage we actually caused until we're face to face with it ourselves. You know the old phrase, a drowning man will drag others under with him? That's Alan Wake. Alan Wake is literally the drowning man. Only the waters in the Dark Place don't fill your lungs. Instead, it floods your mind. And it fills it with all the horrible nightmares, fears, and horrors that your mind can conjure. And Alan Wake drags everybody and anybody around him down under into that dark downward spiral with him. And that's another thing I love about this game. It's not just the fact that it's scary. It's also profound. Like when you're wandering through the Dark Place as Alan, you sometimes come across a series of murder sites and you see some pretty gruesome stuff. Bodies being sliced open, an entire room that's just been massacred, bodies burnt to a crisp, that kind of thing. These images are unsettling enough on their own, but they're made even more disturbing knowing that you wrote it that way. Essentially every nightmare scenario you walk through, you created that nightmare yourself through Alan's writing. And it raises some thought-provoking questions. Like, who's the bigger monster? The fictional one that's going on a mass murder killing spree, or the one who wrote that monster into existence? That context adds another layer of horror to the game in the way that I've never really experienced or even thought about before. And interestingly enough, the scariest, most terrifying, most disturbing moments of this game, it doesn't even involve a big scary monster or gratuitous violence or gore. Instead, it deals with the deteriorating psyches of these characters, what is true and what isn't true, and who these characters become when reality is crumbling all around them. One of the most unsettling moments of this game is when Alex Casey, Alan's detective character from his series of mystery books, basically becomes self-aware that he's a fictional character in a fictional story. And his realization of that fact is nothing short of horrifying. Like, imagine going your entire life seeing the most horrific shit you've ever seen. Solving crimes, tracking down murderers, bringing killers to justice, and working to ensure that there will never be another victim ever again. Only to realize that all of your sleepless nights, all of your shattered relationships, all of your broken dreams, everything and anything that's ever haunted you, it wasn't real. It was a story beat in someone else's novel. I'm not gonna lie, that lividly messed me up. And that's ultimately the kind of horror that Alan Wake 2 specializes in. It's psychological horror, it's meta horror, it's existential horror. But that's not why I want to talk about this game. Why I ultimately want to talk about this game is because this is one of the greatest video game narratives I've ever played. What this game is, and what I ultimately see it as, is a metaphor for the creative struggle. There's a recurring scene throughout this game where basically Alan and Scratch are locked into a room together, struggling over a copy of their book. It's not quite clear which one's Alan and which one is Scratch, but the point is, in this scene, one person's rewriting the book, and the other person's attacking them, trying to stop them from revising the book. And that's that's the act of creation. That is literally the struggle every single writer, director, and creator goes through. Because anytime you're creating something, you always have these two different voices fighting each other, struggling with each other. One being the writer and one being the editor, and many times, most of the time, those voices and perspectives clash with each other quite violently. It's like, oh, that's a stupid idea, let me just scratch that out. Then the other voice is going, no, that's a necessary scene for the story, scratch that back in. It's a struggle. And I love the fact that struggle is prominently portrayed in a mainstream horror game. The fact is, anytime you create something, whether it's a book, a video game, a movie, a TV show, an album, or a YouTube video, there's always a concern, a fear attached to it, that your work won't be received by the general audience. Will they accept it? Will they reject it? Or even deeper than that, if they even take the right messages from it. And that's kind of the point behind Alan Wake 2. It's like, hey, be careful what words you put out into the real world, because you don't know if it's going to grow into this giant monster and swallow everything whole. The game isn't perfect by any means. The combat is just as clunky as it was in the first game, so if the combat pissed you off in the first game, it's going to piss you off just as much in the second game. Some of Saga's chapters in particular drag out a little bit, and while the clue board was an interesting feature at first, it ended up becoming less about solving mysteries and putting facts together and more about just shotgunning clues to the board and seeing what sticks. Do I think this game is worth buying even with those issues? Yes, 1000%. I do not hesitate to say that this is one of the most creative, the most engaging, the most unnerving, the most unsettling, the most horrifying, and one of the most rewarding gaming experiences I've ever had. I'm talking Halo, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, Ghost of Tsushima. It's officially in that camp now. It is cemented in my mind at that level forever. And I do encourage every gamer to purchase and play this game as soon as they can, because I guarantee you it's unlike anything you've ever played before. Okay guys, that has been my thoughts for Alan Wake 2. Have you played this game? Have you not? Are you looking forward to it? What are you most looking forward to most with the future of the Remedyverse? Comment below and let me know. And if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click subscribe down below. I'll see you guys in the dark place.